Paul from High Tech Legion. Let's face it, the more stuff we get in our house, the more clutter we have, the more we might want to downsize on specific things. And one of them items is probably your rig. There's only one fallback to downsizing. When you downsize, you have to do the research on that specific case that you think that you're going to downsize to, or you might run into problems. Your video card might be too big. Your heatsink might be too wide or high. Your RAM might not fit in the specific area that you had it because you're downsizing. You have to also look at a motherboard. If you had two video cards, you might not be able to use two in that specific case. Or you might be able to use two, but you might need smaller cards. Some video cards do not fit in smaller cases. So when you're looking to downsize, make sure you do your research and then make sure that your components will fit in that specific case. That's very important. And I'm even talking power supply here, because too large of a power supply could muck up the works for everything. We're going to be looking at the BitFenix Colossus Micro-ATX case. It's a beautiful case. As you can see from the outside, it's got a nice rubberized type finish in the front. If we look at the side here, we can see that this is a steel side panel. We have two USB 3s, we have our HD outputs, we have our reset button, and we also have our power switch here. On the very top of the case, we do have a removable fan cover. For the back of the case itself, let's go ahead and I'll count with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 expansion slots. Of course, this is your I/O. And then one thing else I want to show you before we get into it. This is actually an LED that runs straight across. There is a button here on the bottom that you can turn that on and off with. And it lights up in a nice blue. So let's go ahead and open it in the front so you can actually see the very front. Now, if you're not using a rad to use, say, like an AIO or something, you cannot put a fan in the front here. This is strictly an intake for your heatsink. So that's another thing you might want to see. Let's go ahead and take a look at the specifications. We'll be right back. I'm going to deconstruct the case to show you the problems that I might have had and what you might be going through. Let's go ahead and start with the deconstruction of this case. First, we're going to take off the side panels. There's 2 screws in the side panels on each of them, and they unscrew pretty easily. They're thumb screws, so we're not going to have a problem getting those off. And once I take off this side panel, I'll show you what you need to connect. Now, on the side panel itself, since the I/O is right here on this side panel, you're going to have all your connectors with it, which is right here. Now, these definitely need to go up and across over the top to fit into your case. So you're going to have to know how to manage wires. If you have no wire management skills, this is not the case for you, because you're not going to be able to hide the wires to get enough airflow in the case so you could use it properly. It's a very sturdy side panel. This doesn't bend whatsoever, so you know it's made of very good construction. We'll take off the other side panel, and I'll show you again that it's made of the same quality. There's nothing special, it's just a rear side panel. And there you go with that. Now you will notice that right here there's a little slit. In the front bezel there's actually a LED cathode that actually goes in here that does send the light down through the channel. Now, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about not having room and not being able to put the components if you don't do your research. As per storage, you can put a ton of storage in here. But when you start putting in storage, you're going to go ahead and impede your airflow. Reason being is because right now I have 2 SSDs and I also have a regular hard drive in there. And when you mount a hard drive on the bottom, you have to pull out the fan that's on the bottom that comes with it, and I suggest to use the heat shield that is underneath it. When you're using the fan, you pull the heat shield off. When you're using a hard drive, you use the heat shield that comes with it. It's very tight inside of here. Very tight. As you can see, my wires, I didn't do too much wire management with it, because I wanted to be able to get it apart as quickly as possible for you so we don't have a 45-minute video. Now, I have a standard size power supply inside the case, which is not very big, but once I remove this front panel, you'll see how it impedes on my video card. I'm using an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 680 in here. It is about 2 inches or an inch over the power supply. So I could not use the primary PCI slot. I had to use the secondary. And now you're probably saying, well, how the hell is he using the secondary? It will be closer to the power supply. No, it's not. And I'll show you why in a second. So we're going to go ahead and remove the hard drive tray for the SSDs. And this is a dual purpose tray, because you can mount 3.5 inches on here also. Now hopefully that one's not too stripped, but there's 4 screws. As you can see, I'm unscrewing them now. I love my automatic screwdrivers. Okay, so now this comes out, and you'll see that it's a bracket. It does mount up on here. There's screw holes for it, etc. You can put up to 3 SSDs on it. If you're not using SSDs on the back, you could mount 2 3.5 inch, 3.5 inch regular hard drives, and they go in that way towards the heatsink. So if you have a heatsink in here, and it's a large heatsink, where mine has a higher profile than most heatsinks, as you can see, you're not going to be able to get your hard drives back here. And you cannot mount them up the front, because what I found, and if you could go ahead and hand me, here it is, sorry. If you have an extra large hard drive, which has a higher gain, or it's thicker, it's not going to fit up here to where you could put your panel. So that's another thing you have to worry about. So let's go ahead, we'll look inside the front of the case, and you can see where my GTX 680 is coming over about 1 inch to 1.5 inches over the power supply. Gee, Paul, what were you talking about putting it in the second slot? If you take a look inside here, you'll notice that the motherboard is actually upside down. So this is an upside down configuration in this motherboard, which means that all your connectors, your USB connectors, etc., that you would normally have on the bottom of your motherboard are going to be up on the top. And of course your not power supply, but your heatsink is going to be down low. So this is why I had to use the second slot of this motherboard, because I had to bring it up higher in order to get it here. But there's also a fan up on the top. And I'll bring this closer so maybe you could see that fan. that fan can impede on your video card. So you have to be careful when you're doing it. And of course I just dropped everything. Alright, we'll go ahead and look at the back. Standard motherboard tray, nice large cutout so you can put your heatsink in. So if you want to mount your motherboard first, yes you can. We'll go ahead and take the top shield off. Just pop my finger up the bottom, probably come off easier. And I'll show you the top and the fan. So when we're looking at it, you can see that I could probably put two 120s in here. But unfortunately, with all the wires that I have, I can't put that 120 because of the way that it sticks in. So wire management is very important with this. In order to hide your wires, you're going to need to remove or add what you can in order to get the proper setup that you desire. So as you can see, I got one 120 up on the top. I have a 140 in the back here. We'll get a closer look at that later. And now we'll go to the bottom of the case, and this is where you'll mount your 3.5s if you're using SSDs. So it's very simple to get this in and out. They supply you with rubber grommets, which you can see here. You put them into the supply holes, and you just screw it in. I have two screws so we can get this out pretty quickly, so you can see what I'm talking about. While I have it flipped up and I'm unscrewing this, you'll notice that at the bottom there's an extra plug for the power supply. This power supply actually needs to be plugged in, so this plug actually goes from here in through the bottom of the case and through to where you could actually plug in the power supply, so you could get this plug here. So it's actually a conduit for your power. Because your power supply is up front, you're not going to be able to run your wire in through the case and come out. So they've done that for you. So that was how quickly the 3.5 came out. You might notice that I don't have an optical disk drive in here. Why don't I? Because with all the optical disk drive goes in the front, which would be right here, and with my video card, with my power supply, and with that fan, I'm unable to put it in. So if you are a proponent of an optical disk drive, you're not going to be able to use it depending on your configuration. Again, remember, think before you leap. I can't express this enough, because if you don't, you're going to end up purchasing a case, maybe sending it back, maybe not being able to get your money back. This is a tremendous case. It's very built. The quality is excellent. But unfortunately, for some people, it just might not be the right fit. So we're going to go ahead and take off the front bezel here. I'm trying not to bend the LEDs on it. There we go. So when we take off the front bezel, you'll notice the inside. Front bezel's made of plastic. Now here's those LED cathodes that I was telling you about. This is actually how you will plug that in. It's got a SATA port on it. And now you can see that the front of the case is actually technically the rear of the case, because this is where the power supply mounts. We're going to go ahead and take out the power supply for you real quick. Well, actually, let me take out the video card. The video card comes out like this. On the side here, you'll notice you have a screw. This is actually toolless, so you can unscrew it and move it back and forth. It slides. Go ahead to the inside of your case. And now you can see that I'm using a GTX 680 that barely fit in. So remember again, too big of a video card, it's not going to work. So now you can see a little bit more of the inside of the case. See what I have, what you might be dealing with when you're getting any case of this size. It doesn't matter if it's BitFenix, doesn't matter whom it is. Any case of this size, you're going to have to learn to work around it. And now for the power supply. As you can see, you do have room through the back here for the power supply. And when I turn it around, we'll go ahead and look at the front. It's a fairly simple design. There's a thumb screw up in the front, which you unscrew. Power supply will come out. Make sure you unplug it, which I already did, from the bottom. Here's the plug. And you'll notice that there's a bracket here. This bracket attaches to your power supply, screw it in, put it back onto the case. Another good thing about the Colossus Mini is the top actually does come off. Of course, I don't want to break it, but there we go. So the top will come off. And if you have some decent wires and decent wiring skills, you could go ahead and route your wires up and around through the top. As you can see, you can route them around here. Because you do have a little bit of a gap coming around. And now finally, we'll go ahead and pull out the motherboard real quick. Now this I do have screwed in, so this is going to take a minute or two. But it is fairly tight, and you do have to put your fans in before you do mount your motherboard. As I said, I mean, it is fairly complicated to work with if you don't know what you're doing. You do need to be an enthusiast or an advanced user in order to actually use a case of this nature. I do not suggest any novices, beginners, or people who don't have experience with wiring and working in confined spaces to use a case of this caliber. It's a great case if you want to downsize. Alright, let's see if we can get that screw out. I thought it was the standoff, but evidently it might not be. Yes, there we go. Okay. Got my fan connected there. And there's your motherboard. Of course, Micro-ATX, mini-iTX motherboard for this specific case. And now we can finally look at the back plate. The motherboard mounting bracket plate, as you can see, it's got a beautiful cutout, and basically all you're going to do is just screw in. So again, everyone, this case is not for the faint of heart. It's a very well put together case. It's got some very nice features to it. If you're not looking to use an optical drive, it's perfect for you. If you are, you're going to have to make some modifications with your hardware, of course. We'll go ahead and give this a gold award for an enthusiast. If you're not an enthusiast, don't even try it. I'm being honest. I don't want you to spend your money and then find out later on that it's just something that's overwhelming. It took me over an hour and a half. Someone who normally could put a computer together in a normal size case in about 12 to 14 minutes, because I do it all the time, it took me an hour and a half just to get everything in here. That was tedious. I take my time when I'm doing it because I want it to be done correctly. So if you're not looking to take your time, if you're looking to rush, I don't suggest it for you also. So we'll go ahead and give it a gold. And remember, make sure you follow us here on YouTube. Make sure you like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/HiTech Legion, or actually it's HTL Reviews. Twitter is twitter.com/HiTech Legion. Visit us at our website, www.hitechlegion.com. Thank you, everyone. Stay thirsty, my friends. See you later. Bye-bye.